He is retired from the Washington State Police. In addition to all the trauma and drama that occurs in a typical police career, he was assigned as a school resource officer at a high school where 5 were shot in a mass shooting. He's also going to talk about his own battles with PTSD as a result of this and other incidents in police work, and the work he does today to help combat PTSD. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Follow the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show on podcast on the Newsbreak app. It's free. And get the latest crime and law enforcement news on the Newsbreak app. It's simple, easy, and free. Just download the Newsbreak app. Then search for and follow the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show on podcast on the Newsbreak app. Contacts from Arizona. We have retired Washington State Police Officer Chris Sutherland on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. First of all, Chris, thank you for your service. Number 2, thank you for talking about a very tough subject to talk about. And number 3, I got to get your input with the state agencies in particular. I never know what to call them. Highway Patrol, State Police, State Highway Patrol Police. What's the terminology used to describe Washington State Police correctly?
Well, again, thank you for having me on here. I'm very honored to be one of your guests. So when I started my career in 2001, I was a Washington State Patrol trooper. So in Washington State, you're a trooper for the state, where I did my first 7 years. And then I lateraled to the city where I worked at in Marysville, Washington. And I did 13 years there. So in Washington, the state agencies, you're a trooper. County, it's a deputy sheriff. And in the city, we just called ourselves police officers.
Gotcha. And here's what I tell people all the time. The only people that make distinctions between police, the term police, deputies, and troopers are on the outside. When we talk about it, when I say policing, that covers all of them. It also covers corrections officers. It also covers dispatchers. A lot of other people go through the mill. And you went through it, didn't you?
I did go through it.
We'll talk about the school shooting in the next segment. You started off as a state trooper for Washington State. You transferred to another department. How big of a change was that for you? And why did you do that?
First of all, it was a huge change. When I got my career as a state trooper, that's what I imagined myself doing my full 25 years, maybe even more. But I had lived in the city. I was lucky to patrol up in my own county where I lived, because sometimes you get sent on the other side of the state. They care, but they don't care where they send you. And then I just started realizing after about 7 years, hey, my kids are going to school in this city where I live. My wife is from this city her whole life. Maybe I should just lateral to here. So now I know exactly what's going on in my own community. Because, when you're a trooper, you don't really have all the connections with the county and in the cities, because you're on the freeway the whole time. And you do make friends with everybody, but you don't have that same contact, the same information of where you live if you're out on the freeways all the time. So that's why I made the decision to go to where I lived.
And I'm sure it's a big transition for you because there's a hierarchy. And I don't know anything about Marysville Police Department, but did you feel like this was a lateral or a demotion of sorts?
I felt it was a lateral, and it's funny that you say that because you know how all departments go. Every department's going to tell you
they're
that they're
so
the best department in the state.
Aren't they? They like
Yes,
it's like not my sandbox. You guys ain't squat. I'll just give you this: Baltimore City Police, where I retired from. We had an ongoing feud with the Maryland State Police, and we'd call each other all kinds of names, all kinds of vicious names. We would attack each other until someone on the outside decided to attack either one of us, then it was game on.
Mm-hmm. I think it's almost like us in the fire department. We give each other such a bad time, but, the mutual respect is there. It's just that's the way that we communicate with each other and have fun. So I think it's kind of the same thing. And a real quick funny story, like when I lateraled from the state, I went to the city, and I remember going to a call real quick, and then I had this person, I was on FTO with my trainer, And the thing was like, well, you're not going to do this for me, then I'm going to call the state patrol because they're the highest entity in the whole state. And I started laughing, and all of a sudden he's like, what are you laughing about? And I go, well, you're kind of calling me an idiot then, because I went from the state patrol to a city police department. But I'm telling you right now, law enforcement is law enforcement. And, I mean, it shut this guy up right away.
Good. And one of the worst calls I ever got was the disputes, the neighbor disputes, the domestic violence calls, the family disturbances. They were like nonstop. And I don't know about you. I have become allergic, extremely allergic to he said, she said, and all the screaming and all the drama. I lose it very quickly.
Oh yeah, it's so mundane, you know, and it is complete, you know. And I said policing work is policing work. There is a difference, obviously. Like I said, as a trooper, I was on the freeway. It was writing tickets and it was doing collisions and stuff like that. And then you move into the city. You're right. You're doing the barking dogs, the domestics, all those little things, which, in hindsight, those are so easy for us to fix because they're such minor problems. But you are right. It was nonstop. And half the time, if you just say, hey, if you guys just be quiet and shake hands, you're going to work this out. You don't need to call 911. Oh. That was my take on a lot of the stuff. So
many times I said to people, do you want to have a good weekend? Do you want to enjoy your weekend, or do you want to go away with me and go to jail? It's your choice. You can do either one. And a great point you said was to shake hands and just go your separate ways and enjoy your weekends. I want to direct your attention to being a state trooper. Now, I think that's, in my opinion, one of the most misunderstood positions because, and I'm sure you see it too, especially on social media, especially on Facebook. By the way, check out our Facebook page, Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Is they're road pirates. They just generate revenue. They're just giving out tickets, and they lose sight of speed kills a lot of people. It maims a lot of people. And they lose sight of the tragedy of those horrific car accidents. You got to do both of those, didn't you?
Oh man, nonstop, you know, and that was one of the things that they would always say, you know, you said it perfectly. It's like, well, you're only making money for yourself, or you have a quota and all this. And I would spend so much time saying, it's against the state constitution for them to put a quota on us. In fact, I was always in my sergeant's office getting yelled at and reprimanded, it not in a bad way, but because I didn't write enough tickets, you know, because
right.
You know, when you went through the academy, they gave you that right. Hey, it's personal discretion, whatever you decide to make that. And so I'm going to tell you, I took that really to heart. And if you deserved one, you got one. And if you didn't deserve one, I was that person that would give you that break. And then I would try to explain that, you know, all these tickets, if you want to break it down, literally, I think it was like a half of a percent that went to the police department. All the rest went to the courts and other state stuff like that. But it wasn't for us. Like I said, if I was making money in this, you don't think I'd write a lot more tickets? You know? And I have to try to explain that to people. Me, personally, I worked in a city. I worked in Baltimore City. I worked where it's extremely high crime, a lot of violence. I hated traffic. I hated car stops. And by the way, I'm going to tell you right here and right now, there's two things. A, they'll get you to have a ticket more than anything else. Number one is rain. We don't want to stop people when it's pouring down rain. Number two, you talk yourself into a lot of tickets. Shut your mouth and just, you know, hey, I was wrong, blah, blah, blah. No big deal. But the minute they started in with that quota stuff or argumentative stuff, it was game on. Yeah, no, and I agree with you 100%, you know, and you are right. You know, the ticket, of course, we had those big Smokey Bear hats, and so I could drop my head and the water would roll into the car if you know, if they deserve that. Or, but I would tell them, like, yeah, I want to get you out of here. I'm here for your safety, trying to get you going so the public can move along this freeway as it's designed to do. But if you are driving like an idiot in and out of traffic, 100 miles an hour or stuff like that, that is what causes crash. And then I'm the one, and this is what I say to them, I'm the one, my fellow brothers and sisters have to go pick up and clean those messes up. Now we have to also go to those families and now tell them, hey, you lost a loved one because of A, B, and C. That's the death notifications still bother me. We're talking with Chris Sutherland. He's a retired police officer, Washington State Police, Marysville Police Department as well. And when we return, we're going to talk about when he was a school resource officer and a mass shooting that occurred and how it affected him. There's so much more heading away. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Have you heard of CreativeCon 2025? You should check it out. The website is CRETheCon.com.
8TIVE.com. It's going on at the Intercontinental Hotel in Chicago, February 21st to 23rd. You get to meet great people like myself, John J. Wiley, host of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, and so much more. That's CreativeCon 2025, where you'll learn how to take your business, no matter what you do. If you're an entrepreneur, business leader, author, podcaster, or online professional of any type, take your business to the next level. Get more details online at CRE8TIVE.com. Again, that's CRE8TIVE.com.
Imagine earning an extra $500 to $5,000 a month or more from the comfort of your home or business, all with Facebook. That's right. Meta is paying people just like you every month. Learn how to create another revenue stream from Meta and dramatically increase your reach, all without breaking your own time bank. Sign up for a free membership at letbreak.com. letbreak.com. That's letbreak.com.
Back to our conversation on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show with Chris Sutherland, retired from the Washington State Police and Marysville Police Department in Washington State. And his website, by the way, is brothersinhealing.com. He and his partner have a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit called Bigger Than Us, where they speak and train others all over the U.S. about PTSD, what it looks like, what works, and most importantly, how to combat it and build a successful life after. Chris, you're a fascinating story. My career was cut short due to injury. Physical injury, doing an act of violence. I thought I'd do 25 years. I thought I'd reach, a higher rank than sergeant, which was pretty tough to do at the time. Nowadays, I have no idea, but I wanted to be in command staff because that's where I thought I could make some changes. And when my career is over, it was over. And I was only 33 years of age. And I was told, I'll be honest with you, I was fried. I was frazzled. I was messed up physically and mentally. Is that a good description for you?
Yes. Same boat. I ended up doing just over 20 years, and my goal was to do 32 because when I left the State Patrol, that was a 25-year career. But I only did 7. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do my full 25 with the city. But after 25 years, after a major incident and after treatment, stuff like that, I couldn't go on any further. And there's nothing like having your career ripped out from under you, like on a single day, because you don't get the proper send-off, you don't get that party, you don't get the whole thing from your department. It's almost like you're on an island, and now you're on your own. Yeah,
I didn't get any. Eventually, they did a group retirement party, and I was part of it. But other than that, it was like, see you later. Here, go to headquarters and get your retired badge and your retired ID, and see you later. And that wasn't even police that did that. That was a hearing officer from the retirement system. Before that, I was in limbo. I didn't know.
Right. Yeah, I had to physically walk into my old department and say, the one thing I do want is that retired badge. I feel like I did put in 20 years, a solid good time and good work, and worked with the community and everyone around. I said, at least I feel like I deserve that. And the chief had no problem. He gave that to me. And then, my wife put on a retirement party for me. So I did have a little one, but it was done not the way that we always see on TV or the way that everyone thinks that these big, huge celebrations happen.
Well, I didn't get the walkout. I didn't get the last call. They see these videos now. As a matter of fact, they didn't have that stuff back then. Granted, I'm a dinosaur. I'm a lot older than you. Let's go into your career with the Washington State Police. What was the worst call, and are you able to talk about it?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny you ask that because, to me, my worst call is what we'll talk about in a few minutes, I guess. But if I look back on my career as a state trooper, I want to say probably my worst one was probably, it was a car with kids in it and went versus a community transit bus. And to this day, I can't remember. I think the kids cut in front of this bus on a back county road. And I don't know why we took it. I think it's because of all the fatalities, but I think there was 4 kids in there and all 4 died. And the only thing I can really remember from that call is the 2 kids in the back seat. They all had their lap belts on. And then the one kid in the back right seat, he had his on so tight or whatever, for whatever reason, that his torso was now laying in his friend's arms on the other side in the back. And so all his body was just his bottom torso still in the seatbelt, but his other torso ripped straight across into the neighboring kids' arms. But they'd all passed away. But just going up to scenes like that, I'll never get those out of my head.
What year was that approximately?
That was probably 2004. I'm thinking.
The reason why I asked that is we had, and it sounds really harsh, when really bad things would happen in the Baltimore Police Department, and they used different slang and different lingo, but they had a unique dialect, a unique accent, if you will, for Baltimore. And they'd say, "You're Baltimore police." Police is what they call it. You can lick your wounds. You can suck it up, buttercup. You can lick your wounds and get later on, like we all do, but get back to work and handle business.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we did the same thing. What was the one phrase? Hey, you signed up for this,
right?
So you're going to deal with it. And I used to own that own mentality, and I was probably one. I'm going to say I was one of the best, but we were all very good at it when we do this profession. But I was that person also that I could look at the most horrific thing in my life and somehow tuck it in the back of my head, and I can go about my day. And for so long, and years and years and years, I was able to do that.
One of the worst things, and I've seen plenty of violence, I've seen plenty of trauma, I'm sure you have too, and I'm not going to belabor that point, but one of the worst things for me was, and we usually get a call from over the radio, "Hey, call the dispatcher at this number." You call the dispatcher that number, then put it over the air and they say, "Go to this address and locate Mr. Brown and tell Mr. Brown, if you find him, that his son was killed in a car accident in Ohio." And I had to do that, and here I was 22. And I had no idea. I mean, it's bad enough handling domestics at 22. I couldn't even handle a serious relationship at that point. But telling a total stranger that their child was killed in a car accident was brutal. And the effects and being the bearer of bad news, and you never knew quite how they'd respond to you. I'm sure you had to do some of that in your career, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a handful of those, and that is probably one of the hardest things to do because, like you just said, you don't know how that family member is going to react. I've had people look at me, stare at me for about 2 minutes straight without a word, not a tear, not anything, and you said you don't know what to do. And I've had some that have come up and just fallen in your arms, and they're sobbing, and now your whole chest is wet now. Your uniform is soaked because they're tears, and then you also have to be that stoic person. And sometimes that was the hardest thing to do because you had to fight back your own tears because I'm a human being. You're a human being. If these things don't affect you, that's when you start considering, are you really a human being? Because it doesn't matter how tough, strong you think you are, how bad you think you look. If these things don't affect you, then maybe you're in the wrong profession because they should still affect you.
And it did affect me, and it still does. And there are certain calls and certain incidents that stay with me, and they usually pop their head up inside my mind when I least expect them, when I least wanted. And to this day, although the impact is a lot less than it used to be, which we'll talk about in a few moments. But the other thing that a lot of people don't get is that you would leave that death notification or that accident call with multiple fatalities and then go handle a domestic. And you had to be able to compartmentalize and shut things off and move on to the next call.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a big something that is missed by the general public, because we're held on this high pedestal where we're supposed to be cool, calm, collected, no matter what time of day it is, no matter what the call is. And then they don't have any idea what we might have just left from. And I would always share that with other people when I go and I do presentations or I talk to other people about either it might be the smallest little thing. I'm like, we don't know what that person to the left of us, if we don't know them, what they just went through or what their family's going through. And we have to understand that. And to be able to do that is a very, I don't know how to put it in words, but it's something that I learned throughout my career on how to do, go from a horrible, worst call scenario and then go to now where someone else thinks it's their worst day in their life.
Right.
Where it's really not that bad, but you still have to act like it is, and you have to keep yourself together.
And sometimes that compartmentalization comes back to haunt you, which we'll talk about in a few moments. Return our conversation with Chris Sutherland on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. He's a retired Washington State Police trooper. Also, Maryville Police Department in Washington State. His website is brothersinhealing.com, and it's 501c3, and his partner dude is called Bigger Than Us. This is the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Here's your chance to get into the ground floor, to make a donation to make the movie Gun Runner based off of the true story of now retired police detective Maria Oliveira, who shot 6 times while investigating a crime, died 3 times, brought back to life, was in a hospital for a month, rushed back to work, only to suffer a near-fatal heart attack, and then several months later, a near-fatal stroke. It talks about his recovery, his life after, and more. That's at gunrunnerfilm.com. Again, you can make a donation at gunrunnerfilm.com.
Think of Facebook as the world's largest marketing platform, and most of their features are free. Facebook has more than 3 billion users worldwide, and more than 68% of them use the platform every day. Learn how to work smarter and get maximum engagement. Plus, many people can earn a monthly income from Meta. Get step-by-step instructions on what to do and what not to do. Start with a free membership. Get details at letbreak.com. letbreak.com. That's letbreak.com.
Return conversation with Chris Sutherland on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. He is contacts from Arizona. He's a retired Washington State Police. Also, Marysville Police Department. His partner and him have a website called brothersinhealing.com and a 501c3 nonprofit called Bigger Than Us. They speak and train others all over the U.S. about PTSD, what it looks like, what works, and how to combat it. There was a point in your career you lateraled from the Washington State Police to Marysville Police Department, and then after a time as a patrol officer, you got into what a lot of people would think is the retirement gig of a lifetime. And I'm air quoting, you became a school resource officer. And we talked earlier, I don't think a lot of people understand state police and state troopers, what they do. And I know they don't have any comprehension of what school resource officers do. Is that accurate?
You hit the head on the nail. That used to be the old school thinking, and I remember when I first got on there, we had some, people, I'm not to say they were trying to retire, but that's where a lot of times these departments would put an officer, male or female, if they weren't doing the best they could, or if they were tired of doing everything, they were saying, hey, I want an easy gig, I want to be out of the spotlight, and they would put them in the schools. And when I had this opportunity to do that, I took a completely different approach. I said, I'm going to ingrain myself. I'm going to be part of this community. These are going to be my kids, my staff. That school was literally like, I took it as my community. I was the only police officer in this whole community, and their safety and well-being was on my hands. And that's the way that I took it.
And that's the way to take it. Look, I'll break it down. I remember being a young police officer getting my first post. My sergeant at the time said to me, he goes, listen, if I pull you up and I point to someone and you can't tell me their name and you can't tell me their address or whether they're a good guy or bad guy, you're not doing your job. End of story. And I felt we talked to each other. Handle your business on your post. And your post was at school and everybody in it, wasn't it?
And it was, and there's even a more of a unique part of this whole story, is the fact I was a Navy brat moving all over the whole country.
Get out, it's something we have in common. I spent most of my life in Norfolk, Virginia as a Navy brat.
Yeah, I did Everett, Washington. I did Lemoore, California, Great Lakes, Illinois, right there in North Chicago, was probably my best time. But then when my dad retired out of the military, we went back to Washington, and so we moved to where in Marysville, and where we bought his house. And so I I went to school at Marysville Pilchuck High School, which is the school that I'm going to talk about shortly. So this story and this part of it, there's so much more that a lot of people don't understand. Is I graduated from this school. I met my wife, who I'm still married to after 30 years. She was a year older than me. I was a junior. She was a senior, from Marysville Pilchuck High School. My son went there for 1 year. And so I am such a part of this community, this high school, that the story even means even more to me.
And it sounds like, I'll be honest with you, a Hallmark movie story. Oh, this is all great. After all the bad stuff, he went here, and this is how he spent the rest of his life. And he and his wife got a nice house with a white picket fence and 2.5 kids in the yard and all that stuff. But that wasn't in the cards for you, was it? What happened?
No, so I'll tell you what. So I got the phone call. My wife and I we were in Vegas, and I was the only one that had put in for this new school resource position job. And the guy that was in there had promoted. We were down watching basketball, college basketball, and they're like, hey, we want to make sure that you still want this. And I remember being on cloud 9 going, oh, my gosh, honey, I've got the job that I wanted. And so we went back, and as soon as I got back from vacation, they took me into the school, and I was just like, man, I cannot believe this. Walked around, and, it does. Like you said, it sounds so great and everything. And then I'm going to tell you that I went in that first year in 2013 at about the end of the school year. So I had about 4 months of the school to work there to get to know some of the people and the teachers. And then it was the following year when my basically happened.
What happened?
So we were, it was 2014, it was October. Our football team was close to going to state, and so we were having a big homecoming party and stuff like that, and we were getting ready for that. That Friday, everything was going on, and I remember, just to back up a little bit, my wife was an educator on the reservation, which is on the other side of I-5. Marysville and Tulalip were all together, but on the other side was the reservation, and that's where she worked with the kids. And she would have me come over and hang out with the kids to be a positive influence for these kids in a uniform. So I'd play with them, all that. And this Friday, October 24th, 2014, I looked at it and I said, honey, I got to get back to school. MP has started. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning. So I gave her a kiss, left, went over there. As soon as I got to the school, I signed in with her. I let everybody know I'm there. I always carried a radio because I wanted to know what the staff was doing, because I wanted to be present for everything. And my security officer, Ann, she called me on the radio and said, hey, I have a student here. There was a car crash in the parking lot. So, you know what I'm going to say. I got on the radio. I said, hey, it's a civil issue. Just tell their parents to exchange information. And, well, you know how it is talking to teenagers and doing that. So she goes, right. She's not getting it or he's not getting it. Like, to this day, I couldn't tell you if it's a male or female student. So I went to the security office, sat down with her and him, or them, whoever it was, and we started talking about it. And then all of a sudden, our fire alarm went off. And in my entire time doing this stuff, we had the largest section of the special needs kids, which to me, that was one of the best gifts I ever had working with, because they love you and I love them, and watching them and just hanging out with them. Well, they would pull the fire alarms, and then you have some of the kids that would do that, and we would just go and we'd squelch it right away. But for whatever reason, this day, that fire alarm went off, and I remember standing up on my radio, and I play my 911 tape when I do a presentation, and I'm on there saying, the fire alarms was pulled. We don't know what's going on. I'll let you know. We're just evacuating MP now, and that's where I thought I was going to go. Well, then all of a sudden, I want you to picture hundreds and hundreds of kids just running, screaming, and then I hear something, Chris, I need you in the office. And so here I am running across campus, and I'm trying to, hey, what's going on? What's going on? And no one's doing anything. There's kids diving under desks. There's staff are grabbing kids, pulling them in and trying to lock doors, and I'm just kind of like, what is going on? Because at the same time, I could not hear my own earpiece because the fire alarm was so loud, the kids screaming, running, me to the wind in my ears, all this kind of stuff. And then I finally get to the very end, and that's where I finally heard. They said, if you're on scene at MP, there's reports of an active shooter in the cafeteria. And I remember at that moment, I was probably 40 yards from there, and my head just went, this is real. And I remember just running across that courtyard, running right into this cafeteria. And as soon as I walked in, as soon as I ran through that door, it was the worst scene that I've ever seen, because here's 5 children, 5 kids, 5 14-year-old babies, all with gunshot wounds to the head. And just the floor, a sea of red, and a couple kids still sitting in the cafeteria. Their eyes were as big as basketballs. And I remember looking at them going, guys, get out of here. You don't have to look at this anymore. And then we had a teacher down there. She was on her knees talking to one of the girls, one of the victims. And she's like, Sutherland, that's the shooter. And I remember looking at him going, no, there's no way. I could not wrap my head, because this kid was a leader. He was an athlete. He was very respectful. My wife went to school with his dad. So we knew this family. And I was like, nope, that's not it. And then ultimately, finally, we had the rest of my brothers and sisters finally showing up. We get aid in there. And I remember them walking in going, black. And, in our profession, that means they're dead. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you, I've never yelled and swore and cussed at a couple firefighters who, in fact, I graduated with from the same school, mind you. We're kind of a small little place. And I'm just like, I could see movement, whether it was their stomach, whatever it was. And I'm like, you better do something for these kids, get them to the hospital. You're not just going to let them die here on the floor. And, after they finally got the couple out that were not obviously deceased, then it was like that fast. So this happens. And then next thing you know, you're walking around feeling like you're useless, because now the cafeteria is sealed up. You're not coming in unless you're signing in with the detectives. And so that was kind of, like they say in law enforcement, you do this job because, you like excitement, you like adrenaline, but it's not like on TV. These things happen, and then it's over with in seconds.
Right.
And now you have to figure out, what are you going to do with your life from that point?
It's over within seconds. We all react in different ways, but where the real problem for many of us, myself included, is when long after, which we will talk about in a few moments. This is the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We're talking with Chris Sutherland, retired from Washington State Police and Marysville Police Department. He was on scene at a mass shooting at a high school that he worked at, and he's here to talk about PTSD. We'll talk more about that in a few moments. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Be sure to follow the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast on the Newsbreak app. Newsbreak is your #1 local news app for current events, free live news for you and your community. Download the Newsbreak app today for free, and be sure to follow the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast on the Newsbreak app.
Imagine contacting millions of people every month using Facebook from the comfort of your home or business. How much would you increase the success of your business or service if you could do that? I do that every day, and so can you. Plus, earn a separate revenue from Meta. Learn how to work smarter and not harder on Facebook. Get step-by-step instructions on what to do and what not to do. Start with a free membership. Get details at letbreak.com. letbreak.com. That's letbreak.com.
Return to conversation with Chris Sutherland, retired from the Washington State Police and Marysville Police Department. He and his partner have a website, brothersinhealing.com. They have a 501c3 nonprofit called Bigger Than Us. They speak and train others all over the U.S. about PTSD, what it looks like, what works, and how to combat it. I imagine from the conversation, and I'm sorry that the families had to go through that. I'm sorry the victims had to go through that, those students. I'm really sorry that you and your family had to go through that. And I say your family, that includes your wife as well, because they catch a lot of the brunt. And it's a natural thing to develop PTSD as a result of everything that you went through, with this being the straw that broke the camel's back. But for many of us, myself included, the real problems didn't start until I got home.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, because, I can still, this day still obviously resonates in my back. I can close my eyes, I can keep them open. I can see exactly that cafeteria floor in great detail, no matter what time of day it is, whatever. But during the time this happens, as you probably remember, it really wasn't real at that moment. It was almost like a movie. You're just there doing your job.
Right.
Okay, I got dead people. I got to do this. Okay, now I got to get detectives. All you're doing is thinking of that. And that's what I was so good at, all the deaths and all that kind of stuff that happened throughout my whole career. And then I remember when this one hit, during that time, it wasn't real until I stepped outside of the cafeteria and I was no longer right there inside the crime scene. And I started to feel, is this real? Did this really happen? Like, I'm actually questioning myself. Did this really happen, or am I dreaming?
Right.
And you'd have people coming up, hey, how you doing, Chris? How you doing? And I remember looking at them going, I don't know how I'm doing. I mean, and that was a quote.
That's the most honest answer I've heard in a long time, Chris. And people say, how are you? I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, no, because I had never experienced something at this magnitude. And I mean, it's got to be a very low percentage of people that deal with something like this. And for me, it was like that. Yeah. Usually if you would ask, hey, how are you doing? Hey, I'm doing great. How are you doing? That's our
right.
natural response. But I remember when they would ask me at that team, my own brothers and sisters out there, how are you doing? And I would look at them and I honestly just went, I have no idea how I'm doing. I don't know what happened. How did this happen to me, to these kids, to that, and I did notice that I started taking some of the focus on me, and not as a selfish thing, but once I said it out loud, I go, I can't believe this happened to me. And once I said that and I heard that, I went, Chris, this isn't about you.
Right.
I get
it.
Kids. This is about their family.
One of the things that I did, and I still do, to be honest with you, to some degree or another, a lot less, is there something I could have done different? We second guess ourselves all the way through, and I had a lot of experienced officers, a lot of them are Vietnam combat veterans, and they're like, you do this, this is where you did wrong. Second guessing is about how you get better at this job. But did you think that you could have done something differently and it prevented this tragedy from happening? Did that ever occur to you?
From day one, and to this day, I still have a tiny part that I still question because, my job, I was in that cafeteria every lunch. I was there. I was mingling with the kids, and it was this day I wasn't, but I was dealing with another problem, 100 yards away from the cafeteria with another student, but yet it's still hard to accept because I was in that cafeteria every day, and I wasn't there this day, and that ate me alive, and I put the blame on me. I thought the community hated me, that I was going to get fired, my wife was going to leave me, and it got to the point where, literally, I was in the shower, and I was going over all stuff, and I'm like, you have no purpose left in this world, Chris. No one loves you. Why don't you just go kill yourself? And that was what was going through my head at that time.
I got to ask you this question, and you don't have to go in great detail about it. One of the problems I had was I started developing, I couldn't relax. I couldn't calm down at all. I was constantly hypervigilant, and I would turn to alcohol so I could sleep. And I became very short-fused with my wife and other people around me, and it was like what I feared was far worse than what actually occurred. But I found myself getting angry at the drop of a hat. Was that a situation for you?
I couldn't have described my symptoms any better than what you just said. My buddy and I would go to the casino. We'd stay out there 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. We would just get as drunk as we could, find our way home. But same thing. I would snap. I would be angry. I wouldn't want to go do anything. I didn't want to, to me, every backpack had a gun that wanted to kill me or kill someone, do a copycat killer. And so I was always like that. If I saw an entrance, I had to know where I was. How am I getting out of here? Surveying everybody. If you looked like someone had a threat to me, I'm going to focus on you. And that was just eating me alive. And I wasn't able to communicate with my wife. I didn't learn how to talk to my wife until I went to treatment, to be honest with you.
So let's fast forward to treatment. And I did that route too, and the best thing I ever did for me. It really is. But it was, at the time, it felt like I was a total failure. I failed my marriage. I failed as a cop. I failed as a father. I was a failure. And here I am in some sort of, and I'm air quoting, rehab, trying to get better from mental issues. And just a few months before that, I was a cop handling life and death situations.
Yeah, and when these things happen, and when I was describing all this stuff, in my mind, coming from a military background as a Navy brat, to me, PTSD, PTSI, that was reserved for Vietnam vets. That was reserved for those that have seen combat in other countries. That wasn't for us police officers or firefighters, and that's just the way that I thought. And so I went back to work, and I worked another couple of years after that school shooting, and continued on, and then finally one day, to this day, I can't tell you what it was. I don't know what happened, but a voice in my head just said, you need to figure out if you're going to help yourself out or we're going to go home and you're going to start your revolver. Yeah. And I remember I made a phone call to a friend who went to a treatment place for trauma for first responders. And I said, brother, I need your help right now, because if not, I'm not going to be here tomorrow. And he said, I can get you on a plane tomorrow. And I was like, I was actually out on a retreat with the boys basketball team because I helped coach when I was at the high school. And I said, well, let me go home. My wife has no idea that I'm even at this point in my life. She has no clue that I'm thinking these thoughts, that I'm, suicidal, that all these things. And so let me go make good with my wife over the weekend. And I was on a plane that Monday. So this was a Friday. I got home, talked to my wife, shared that. She was ecstatic because she knew something was wrong, right. And she knew that I needed help. And I was just glad that I realized that too.
I'm glad you did before. What happens for a lot of cops, myself, this did happen to me, it tremendously impacts a relationship and wind up in divorce. And you wind up as a father who doesn't have custody of your children, all that stuff. And there's a tremendous price to be paid. And this happens so often. Look, we could talk forever. We're running out of time. I want to focus on what you're doing today. BrothersInHealing.com, and you're Bigger Than Us. Let's start with Bigger Than Us. What is it that you do?
So what we do now is we call ourselves Brothers in Healing, because him and I were both retired. We've been friends for over 30 years. He had some trauma. I believe he's going to talk to you on one of these days, and so you'll hear his traumas. And we just came together and said, we've got to do something, stop being reactive, because we have all these brothers and sisters that are taking their own lives in the first responder world. And, people think that we're losing our lives to the bad guys or to accidents, but no, we are losing our lives to ourselves. We're taking our own lives. That's the main way.
And it's been that way since the 50s.
Yes. And we just said, let's do something. Let's go and start this Brothers in Healing. And we started a Bigger Than Us because, you know what, let's raise money so we can help people. And we figured out Bigger Than Us because this problem, this thing that we were doing is way bigger than my buddy Woody and I. It's way bigger than us. So we said, let's just call it Bigger Than Us. And so we go around now and we will speak at presentations, we'll speak at conferences, and we share our stories. And I know you and I talk some about, you know, the trauma dumping. We don't trauma dump either. We give a couple big things that happen. We talk about our family issues also because, you know, none of us have a perfect family. And I talk about, you know, my son who was a heroin addict in my jail more than he was out of my jail. Sexual assault my daughter had when she was a student at the University of Washington, where I was called my chief and put my gun down and said, hey, my gun and badge are on my desk. I'm going to Seattle to kill somebody.
Right.
And luckily that didn't happen. And so we just said, let's take this bad and let's turn it to something good. And what we found when we do our presentation and we show these men and women, and a lot of times these grown, super strong SWAT guys that think that nothing can affect them, they see us up there showing our emotions, talking about this. What didn't work? All the alcohol, all the partying, all the doing the bad shit that we were doing.
All the stuff we rely on doesn't work. I got to cut you off, and we'll come back to you in the future. Your website, brothersinhealing.com. That's brothersinhealing.com. Chris, A, thanks so much for your service. B, thanks for being a guest on the show. Very much appreciated.
Hey, thank you so much, and love what you're doing, brother. You're saving lives, man.
I'd like to thank our guests for coming on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or two or three. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.